Karen? Doesn't act sure or anything.
Karen, we can.
It's showing that it's really.
Testing, testing. Can you hear us, Karen? Oh, excellent. Can you say something?
I'm here. Did you hear?
Very good. Thank you.
If my dog barks, I'm going to mute myself.
That's all right. We'll make your dog an alternate.
Okie doke.
Okay, we're running a little past the hour appointed for this meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. I'm Carol Wilson. Bang. So we're in session at 2:34, looks like, on the 14th of June. The consent agenda is before you, folks.
Let's do the roll call.
Please.
Okay. Chairperson Wilson.
Here.
Member Davenport. Here. Member Duncan.
Here.
And alternate member Lowe.
Here.
Council member Hines. Here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, then we do have, sir.
No.
Do we have any public comment? No, we don't have any public comment. Okay, then we need to go to the consent agenda. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. The only thing on there is approval of the ordinance review committee meeting minutes from May 24. And you have those in front of you. Any additions or corrections? Do these have to be voted on? Okay.
I second.
All right. Emma has moved approval. David has approved, has moved a second. All in favor say aye.
We're going to do a roll call vote. Okay.
We do a roll call for everything.
Yes. Member Duncan.
I'm going to abstain as I was not present.
Okay. Member Davenport. Mhm.
Aye.
And member Wilson
Aye.
and member Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So item 1 on the regular agenda is labeled 2. Report from City Manager Brenton Lewis on the history of the Woodcreek Court of Ordinances, and we will discuss that. So Brenton, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Basically, first of all, we'll start out by talking about the difference between the ordinance and a resolution.
Good.
An ordinance is actually a law. That because, and when an ordinance is passed by the elected body, that is a law. Now, if a resolution is adopted by the elected body, that's more of a guidance to it, but it still holds a lot of water. So you'll be looking at all the ordinances Now, back in July 2012, then council member Bill Shell had a subcommittee, and they wrote up over a 90-page document going through all of the ordinances that were reviewed. And why they did that was because the city was going to get ready to codify their ordinances. And basically what happens is then they just go ahead and put all the ordinances into a big book. And you see it on, we'll go into that in a minute. And that way you have what the meat of the ordinance is. It's not all the whereases, it's not anything besides what the actual code says. Our first company was American Publishing. And they're the ones that originally codified the ordinances, and that was all the changes that happened on that document that everybody saw.
Yeah, did everybody get a chance to look at that? I thought, if we're gonna do that, I'm not doing this. If we're gonna put together a 98-page ordinance review, then
Well, you
That's
gotta
right.
remember what they did was they went through each individual
I know.
ordinance. Now, y'all don't have,
Thank you.
you'll be going through the 200-page document looking at the ordinances
All right.
that are codified. And so basically now we changed our companies. They went back through and looked again at all our ordinances. And so we're operating under the Municipal Code Corporation, Muni Code. And we went with them about 2019. One of the reasons we went with that is that almost our website, everything else is all tied together. Where when we had American Publishing, we had a different website, and you had to leave go to the website for the American Publishing. Now it's all tied together. It ties everything together, and when something's adopted, so you can search it. And basically, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
No, when I finished that document, I did think to myself, this is a lot of work. They did a lot of work. And they really set Bill and that group set a high bar. So what role I do have a question about the Muni Code people. What exactly is their role?
Their role is, once an ordinance is adopted, that they will take the ordinance that's adopted, and they will actually place it in the current, the right area that it needs to be. If you're just amending a section, like section 50, which is water quality, and then certain things inside of it, then you say, the ordinance will be written that to amend section 50.32, whatever it is. And then, but if you write a complete new ordinance and council adopts it, you don't have to worry about sections or anything else, a chapter or anything like that. They actually place it in the area.
Okay.
They also cross-reference it against state law. So if you look at the very back of the index.
Oh, wow, that's pretty helpful. That's very helpful.
Well, mine went off. Mine was great.
No, yours was on.
Yeah, but I don't have to do that at the radio station. So basically, yes.
Karen, you have a question?
No, I just was hearing Brenton better when he changed his mic. So
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. All right. So basically, they also cross-reference against state law. They make sure it's in compliance with state law. And in the back of the whole code of ordinances, there's a cross-reference as to the Texas statutes.
You know, that's very handy.
Yeah.
It means we don't have to have a full-time lawyer.
Well, no,
Sounds like.
because what they do is they just do that cross-referencing, and every time we send in something, they look at it. And we'll get into that when we get into brief training on the city website, navigating the code of ordinances.
Okay.
But anybody else have any more questions about just the basics of the ordinance?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
That's it? That's the background?
It's short and sweet.
I was waiting for like 5 o'clock. I was going to be nodding off with your talk about the history of the ordinance. Thank you.
Sure. Sure.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
I believe some of the questions were also about like, where did our code come from? Besides, because I don't think we wrote it originally all ourselves
No.
in by Bill.
Well, basically, a lot of the ordinances were brought in from other cities. They also, because when you look at chapters 154 and 155, they're being rewritten right now. You can pull up the Dripping Springs Code, and it has everything, and I think it's in 154, one section. It goes all the way through. We stop at I, they continue past J.
And what are those? What is that category?
Well, that's subdivisions.
Okay.
So, but we have to make sure it is in compliance with when the state law changed.
Yeah.
And so that's being done by our planning director right now. Then also, if you think about it, I think a lot of it, I'm just assuming this is that a lot of the things that are in the code of ordinances came from when the city was still part of the WPOA. Because some of those requirements are what the WPOA had.
Right.
And they just use their bylaws for it. But most of it, I can't think of any city that actually writes an ordinance on its own. They always find other cities.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right. And the main thing is you got to remember too is because we are a general law city, we have to comply more with state law, which is with local government code.
Right.
When you get into a home rule city, they actually adopt a charter.
So it might help to tell us what the difference is between a home rule city and a general law city.
5,000 population.
That's
That's it.
so if you get over 5,000, you fall into a different
you can
category.
become a home rule city over 5,000. It takes an election, things like that, but under 5,000, you have to comply with state law.
And that local code, that local government code, how do we find that? Is it online?
Yes. And all you got to do is type in local government code Texas, and it'll go through and show you all the statutes. And what you have to remember too is that when you look at those statutes, you can be more restricted than what the statutes say, but you cannot be less restricted.
Okay.
So that way, when you read it, you can say, I want to do this. So if you say, this is kind of a stupid analogy, but state law says I have to have a 20-gallon can of gas in my garage. You can say, no, you can only have a 5. But you can't say, no, you can have a 25-gallon.
Okay. Everybody got that? What, I guess you're plugged into TML and some other organizations that follow what the legislature's doing that might have a bearing on general law cities.
And basically what they do is they have, when the legislature is in session, they send out an update to the member cities, which is, with the council members, they get the update, staff gets it, to show basically what's happening in the legislature. And they follow all the bills that have anything that would affect the city itself.
Okay. Any questions or any other questions? Emma? Karen, you with us? Okay,
All right.
good. Thank you, Brenton. We need a brief training on the city website and navigating the code of ordinance.
And I know Karen can't see this. I'm sorry. I don't have this technology down real well, so I can share a screen and still share you.
That's okay.
All right. So basically, you go to the City of Woodcreek website, which is woodcreektx.gov, and you just click on the code of ordinances. Now, and then if you want to look at something, I know this is hard to see, but if you want to say fences, just type in fences for the search, hit enter, and it brings up every code that has something to do with fences.
Every code of ours.
Of ours, yes. Yes. And then, and so when you get into the complete code, I'm going to regress just a little bit here. It's broken down by titles and let's see here, chapters and then sections. And as this committee starts reviewing the ordinances, I don't know if you're going to start from, I'd say section, 30 was just recodified or redone, was just adopted by the council. But when you get into the first general provisions, a lot of that is just basic.
Yeah.
That just is state law, so you shouldn't even have to look at that at all.
Okay.
And then you get into the chapter 30, chapter 31, municipal court. And I don't know how detailed y'all want to go if you want to read every chapter and see if you have any questions on it, because you might.
Yeah.
But when you get into, see, there's, talks about state law, we'll scroll down here. Chapter 32, financing and tax, and revenue taxation. And that's basic, it talks about the investment policy, how to tax tangible property. So I think, and I'm just, when you get into records retention, there's nothing you can do there. That's state law.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have to comply with that.
That will be clear to us, what?
I'm going through the ones, I'll get to the ones that y'all should really look at.
Okay.
Yeah, and Deborah might, correct me on this, but, when you get into more things like public works, and then you have the water quality ordinance, this is where you really get into the meat of the laws. And I think one thing that Emma has talked about is, and I agree that at some point there should be, if an ordinance is written by, with all the attorneys stuff in it, well, there should be basically an overview of what that ordinance does. So it won't be codified or anything, but the citizens need to know this is what it is. I think Deborah just did one on the tree ordinance about the major changes to look at.
Okay.
So that way you don't have to read the whole thing and then go through it and say, okay, what did it really say? And so, but basically from chapter 50 on, that's where y'all be looking at it.
50 on.
Yeah. And then if you, what they only codify this, they actually update the website, not every time we send them an ordinance. So when you hit the gavel, that's over on the left-hand side, you can see code of ordinances that were adopted in 2022. And so this shows you the most current ordinance that has been adopted by the council, but it has not been codified yet.
Okay.
Those were codified.
Okay. Those were codified.
Yeah, because it just came out.
Yeah, they
So
just came out. Okay. They have
It
been.
just codified.
But you can see all the ordinances were done in 2022.
Okay.
And since, like Maureen said, since it just came out, yes, they are all codified. Any questions?
No, I'm glad you directed us to the ones we really ought to look at.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say don't look at the other ones, but they are very basic
Okay.
because, that's basically just setting up the city itself.
Let me ask you, in that regard, does TML or another group put together a model
No.
ordinance for general law cities?
No.
Why not?
Because every city is different.
I guess so.
If you want to compare us, okay, you think about Wimberley and us, we're about the same size. But not a difference right now by population. If I compare what we are now to what their sign says, we're both general law, but they have a bunch of other things going on that we don't have.
Yeah.
And so, you think about cities less than 5,000, they are all different.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right. Very good. Any questions for Brenton? Hey, Bucky.
Hey, Bucky, yes,
What
sir.
you know, man?
Go to HEB and get Mary Alice Bauer.
Actually, the council also issued a proclamation or on
It's
her
Mary
100th.
Alice, it's today. It's her,
Wow, good.
She has family.
Want money? You want donation? Oh, you want money from him?
Yeah.
Oh.
If they wouldn't, you get their pay. There's a lot in there. Sounds like a job for Brendan Lewis. I second that. Can I second my motion?
No. See you.
See you, Bucky.
Bucky, I have another one of those umbrella bases coming. I'm sorry.
What?
I'm sorry. Well, I liked it.
Dexter seconded it. Dexter said go get those files.
It's not on the agenda.
I'm second Dexter.
Well, it's not on the
And
agenda.
then I'll get Chi-Chi to follow that.
That's right. There you go.
We're on it. We're on it.
And I'll even get her approval.
Yeah, I'll get Laredo after all of
Yeah. I'll have all the dogs going in. Go to the circle and be a big flock.
My dogs adore you.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, mine do too. They hear his truck coming a mile away.
I just saw that sign up so often.
That is.
It is, truly.
Anyways, back forward.
All right, see you.
Yeah.
We'll see if that door's locked. Nope, okay. All right, back to the questions.
Okay. So the city website is pretty easy to use.
It is.
If you
It's
haven't
very
looked
easy
at
to
it.
use.
Yeah, Deborah?
I would just like to highlight if you'll go like back or close your little side screen there with the fences, because it's kind of in the way. You see on the
Oh, yeah, I
side
see
screen
it.
there. Click on like traffic code, I guess, or
You want me to
yeah,
go
go
back?
back. Yeah, go back. So something that helps me when I'm looking at this, it would, like, don't type in anything.
Oh, okay.
Or this is fine. Click on any of them. I don't know how y'all tend to work, but see those series of options there in the blue? You can print these things. You can send a link to each other. You can,
Download it.
yeah, download it. You can, so those little buttons. Work on it directly. Look at each tab. You can get really specific about what you're looking at and sharing and communicating over. And then the other thing to highlight is the titling of everything. So it's like Title 5, Public Works, Chapter 50, Water Quality. And then, you start diving into that and it's like 50.1, 50.2. So that was something when I first joined council, I didn't ask anyone. I had to just pay attention, and I was like, "What are they talking about?" And so I started to learn how to read those numbers. So people will often reference, okay, 50.45, A, and so seeing how it's titled out like that would be helpful when you're describing to somebody. What are you talking about? Where are you talking about? So looking at those numbers and letters is actually pretty helpful.
Yeah, and also if you look on the far right side, if you hit the last icon on the right, it says compare versions, and it shows you supplement 2, supplement 1, and what it was at the republication.
What does that mean?
That means you can compare just the history of that section.
Oh, okay. And if there's not a history,
The first time it's been in.
well, that's really helpful.
It's a pretty nice tool, actually.
Very
The show changes. Some of the codes I've looked at, I'll go show changes, and it shows me where we've amended it, and it just shows like the strike. Show changes is the button on the top right,
Right there.
right there. Yeah,
What is that?
Look, all of that.
Oh,
That's
show change. Okay.
yeah, everything in yellow has been changed. Right.
So the changes are described by a supplement. Supplement 1 is the first time it changed.
Well, the changes are by, it would be supplements when they actually update the code. But it shows everything. When you look at the bottom, I'll show this. When you look at the very bottom of each section, you can see that the original ordinance is adopted with 0-63A. And March 2002, next was ordinance. Adopted in 2010, and then it shows all the ordinances that were adopted.
On those numbers, if you'll notice, the first section is the year, and then down there's a number. So that's that number, like 139 or whatever it is, that which number in the ordinance of that year? Or is it not years? It goes forever, okay.
Okay, on the back of your package, you have a copy of the review of, I'm sorry, the important Woodcreek this document. Looks like we want to try to look at that and then see if we can try to update on that in the future. Or how did the word get out that this document was available?
Privacy. Request, and they don't have to give it to them. It's a privacy. I'll go back even farther. Utility bill on posting. How many people were actually there? And with Aqua Texas being private, so PEC, the only one we might be able to get, don't have roots, because if you don't have the tile already, you can get anything.
They're not a true public.
No, they're not. But basically, what's happening now,
Blind.
well, unless city gets something going on in the neighborhood again, where one person knows somebody. And also what was it, home sale? Somebody. But we know census here. Yeah, and then depends on size city, but I think I've estimated how many but you just go around.
So,
Yes, we do.
yeah, I think we do. What we want to get to some high points on that, or a lot, all high points on that. The important.
Important argument that it's on. Yeah, but I don't have a copy.
Is there anything
Oh,
on
yeah.
there that's out of date?
No, it's pretty up to date. Because staff tries to, every time something is adopted that changes on this one, to issue the new one. So you can see this one was last issued on February 24th, 2021.
Yeah.
No, I don't see that on mine, that date. Do you have it? When I got cut off?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I do.
That's right here.
The
Oh,
traffic
that's
section's
Yeah,
out of date.
traffic sections different.
Oh, the traffic section is? How do we get that updated?
Well, staff
can-
has to
yeah,
update.
Staff has got to update that. Is there a plan to do that?
Write the note.
I'm writing it right
If you
now.
see.
All
her
right,
write a
Maureen.
note, If she writes the note, you know what'll happen.
God bless her.
Okay, thank you.
But we're not discussing this right now.
Yeah.
That's something we can
But
later.
and at some point, you might want to see if there's other ordinances. You go through the review also to see if you think it should be added to this list. Or deleted.
Deborah, have you got, as a council member, do you have any, anything that jumps out at you that is going to be changed or has already been changed? Does this look like it's up to date as far as you're concerned?
Well, like I just pointed out, the traffic one, and then right now we're looking at tree trimming. The tree board met yesterday. There's a new ordinance coming back from the tree board to the city council. If that's passed, it might alter parts of this. I definitely see, I mean, I love that it's only one page. I see areas that could be expanded, but then, once you start moving past one page, it can be hard to keep attention.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I know that part of the reason why this made it on the agenda was that everyone in the room didn't know it existed. So I think that originally, sort of the concept of this item would be beyond updating it, considering a future update. Your item title says how to direct citizens to the document. So you started to kind of touch on that before. And so that would be an area for discussion. And I know that Emma had sent in some questions to you that I was copied in that email. I think that they're kind of tied to this item personally. I mean, just sort of seeing those. She wrote, do residents feel they are more or less aware of our ordinances? Do people feel needed information on ordinances is readily available? Are there any ordinances residents feel are unfair? Are there any issues that feel need to be addressed through new ordinances? So it's not totally applicable to this, but I feel there's relation in this project, if you all were to take this project up, as far as updating this and looking at how to better get it into citizens' hands.
Oh, we will take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
I think this would solve maybe some communication problems with the council and with the city staff if people
I'll be listening.
knew what was going on.
Well, like Brent said, I've been complaining for years that I didn't want to read all the whereas. But yet I still didn't know this existed. I didn't know to say, is there a simplified document? And people took my complaints, both in writing and in person, but nobody ever said, well, did you know we have all this? I mean, this is crazy. So, yeah, we need to make it clear that, okay, if you've got a question.
We do.
We've got a simple list for you. And as you see, I highlighted a number of them. I mean, there's something like, for instance, under health and sanitation, property owners must keep dangerous vegetation under 6 inches. And I thought, well, what is dangerous vegetation? I mean, I'm not sure.
Maybe that's under,
That-
maybe it's in 90.05.
Is that poison ivy? I don't know what dangerous vegetation is. So,
I think it's talking about debris and dead items. So,
but I'm saying, I'm not a totally uneducated person, and I look at that and I think, well, so we can clarify. It's my own stuff.
Okay.
Maureen,
Well, it was actually kind of meant for all vegetation just to prevent fires. So people, park on the grass
Good
sometimes.
point.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's what
Okay.
the reason for
I
that was.
see. Okay, now that
So
you
maybe
said
that word
that makes
dangerous
sense.
needs to be
Well,
removed. It's
yeah,
just
well,
vegetation.
we're going to clarify language.
Sure,
That-
sure.
that-
But that's just an example.
But now that Maureen says that is dangerous. She's right.
Well, I do think that's something we want to do, Deborah, is look at this document and see if it's adequate and how to get it out so people know that it's there. Well, Maureen, that would be one thing to revisit on the next agenda. Talk about how we do that
Okay.
and how, how exhaustive we're going to be.
Maureen, what percentage of the population is signed up for
That's signed
You
up
mean
for the
email.
email blast.
Yeah.
So it's about 400 to 500 people, but it's hard to say what percentages because I get it here, I get it at my house, my husband gets it. People outside the city gets it, the newspaper get it. So it's really hard to say.
So it's much like, so if you were to take 400 of 1,400 people,
Oh,
you know.
That
well,
wouldn't
let's
be
go
a-
to about 1,900, 1,800.
Okay, let's go 1,800. Even
Yeah.
400 of 1,800,
It's-
it's less than a quarter, and it's probably less than that based upon what you just said.
Right, and remember, we have text messages too, that's 177 people are signed up.
Do we know how many houses there are in Woodcreek?
We do, I just can't think of the
Okay,
number.
okay. So that's an effective.
Make sure you're using your microphones. I have a citizen messaging us that they can't hear.
Well,
I think it's, the number is under 900, including apartment complex apartments.
Yes.
And then actual homes is likely around 800 or just under
You're right,
800.
Deborah, it's like 911 or something,
Well, you can
and then there's
figure
like
if there's if they
72
figured it
apartments.
2.3 per property, and the total population is what, 2,600?
No, about 1900.
Okay. It's in the Census Bureau. I mean, they had it, they have that number, and I wrote a story about that number, so it's out there.
But you only need to see that every home has access to.
It'd be nice if we could. Yeah.
Something that council did fairly recently was also worked on like when you need a permit thing, you know,
Yeah.
like an outline, and then that was put on the permits page. So this could, in theory, also maybe be more prevalently linked there, even more prevalently linked on the actual web page. But I was looking at this, and I think even if we divided it into items that require permits versus just general things that are like prohibited, or you have specific guidelines, because I'm looking at this, and as a resident, when I first moved here, the things that I was most concerned about was, what do I need to do to my house, and what do I need to contact the city for? And I, even in talking to existing residents, that's always the question: do I need a permit for fill in the blank?
Right.
So I think kind of if we look at what the council did there, and then look, you know, because I love how organized this document is. It's very easy to read.
I do too.
And my only suggestion would be to maybe consider separating out, these are permitted items that you must contact the city for. Here are other things.
Well, there probably is a different way of not organizing, but presenting material so you could get more information on whatever it is you're producing. I think that the permit thing would be a great idea because I don't know all the things that are, you know, I don't necessarily want to expand the reach of that, but I was talking to a guy the other day who was going to build a fence with a metal pole that goes in the ground. You pour concrete around it. And I said, well, have you called 811 about that? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, state law says before you dig in Texas ground, you're supposed to call 811 and make sure you're not, you know, going into a pipeline or a water line or anything else.
Electrical.
Ma'am?
No, just, I've seen people hit electrical when they've dug without calling. I've lost this.
Utility lines, electric, they flag everything.
It's not just electric.
Electric, cable, plumbing, gas.
Yeah.
Everything.
Right.
So that needs to, people need to know about that, but I'm not sure we're responsible for telling them about it. I just brought it up because I don't know of any other thing like that that is a kind of a citizen responsibility in the same way as that is. Anyway, something to think about. I do think the document can be altered so that it's all on a brochure or something like that. Item number 5, discuss and take action on the recommendation of the city council to complete a full overview of Woodcreek Code of Ordinances. It sounds to me like Brenton was suggesting we don't do that, that we start with like number 50. So what is the council's intent?
So Councilmember Grummer proposed this item and council passed it. And the general idea that he had was beyond a deep dive into each section, looking at the overall organization of it, the way the chapters are. Does this make sense for our city? And so that was his like sort of broad overview. And then the longer term goal or intent is an actual full review of the ordinances chapter by chapter for this committee to make recommendations about how the ordinance could be better organized, or if something's missing, or if maybe it's overreaching in some way. This committee can't make those decisions, but they can provide council with recommendations. So
Right.
I think the where this is coming from is that on council we have frequently run into an issue where our code needs to be updated. It's either not in alignment with state code, or it's not how our citizens operate, and so it's not functioning properly for us.
I thought Muni Code took care of that. They
So-
told us that.
What happens, and Brenton explained it in that meeting, is that every so often we can ask for a full audit, and that full audit entails our staff sitting down with Muni Code officials and maybe even our city lawyer, and they go item by item, sort of double checking that it aligns with state code, highlighting areas it doesn't, and cleaning it up. But that is not the same function as us as community members looking at our code and having it work for us. So that's, and so another function of this committee beyond this specific item would be when council goes to look at passing a new ordinance, it would, in theory, pass before council finalizes it.
I can see that, yeah.
So you have to think about that in this process. You're not only looking at what might be needed or how we should maybe rearrange or combine, you're also looking at familiarizing yourself with the ordinances to the point that you feel confident making recommendations about them, because that's a really extensive process. So that's kind of part of this item, is just us, each of us, me as a liaison, reading the code thoroughly. Something that, like, just to give you a basic example of something that I have seen that might need to be addressed, is that our parks board, the setting up of our parks board is outside of all the other boards and committees and where they're organized in the code. And maybe that's fine, right? But this committee could look at that and go, wait a second, why is the parks board over here in this other area of the code? And why is the process for setting up the parks board so wildly different than every other committee or board we have? Because it's the only one that's all mayor appointed. And it wasn't necessarily like that before. So that's just a prime example of maybe something that pops when you're like, aha, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why is this over here? It should be here. Why is this one board so different than these others? And I'm not adding a quality on that. Maybe it's fine that it's there and that it's a mayor appointed board. But that to me was just something that I've wondered about. Another thing in our code that I know is off, and we've talked about, is our masonry percentages were off for a long time and didn't meet state code.
Or what?
The state code changed. We can no longer tell people what materials aesthetically to use in building their house.
Yeah, we had it at 55%.
Yeah.
Had to be mason, and that was against state code.
Yeah. So we've gotten the process of changing that. So there might be other little things like that pop, or like, for example, I believe that our gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the Board of Adjustments procedures outlined in our code do not match state code. So these are just little notes I've made as a council member, looking at things I've been like, huh? Or like in our, something else the comprehensive plan group is working on now is setting lot sizes, minimum lot sizes, because currently right now our code doesn't tell us that. It just gives us building regulations, and we need minimum lot sizes. So these are just all other areas that we've seen an issue of. There's more too, just little things, and I'll try to make an effort of bringing them up as they come because I have a binder of notes. But it's that kind of concept of why the ordinance review committee just used to be an ad hoc committee that the mayor would send an ordinance to and have them give feedback. So now we're trying to make it an official group where it's all done publicly, and then that also gives us you all can do more. You can kind of really look at the code and think, is this working? Because right now we have a lot of code for a very small city.
Yeah, I think too much.
We have a lot of permit processes and things. Some of them have to be there, but some of it might create an unnecessary burden on staff. It can be hard to enforce. And so this committee could sort of look at the code with that lens.
Would it be fair to ask the members of the city council to do what you've done and and put together a list so we can know what those are? I don't want to have to read the whole code and weigh that every word against what might be a problem if you guys have already identified it as a problem.
We can definitely, I can send you what I have.
Maureen, could we ask the city council, ask the mayor to put that on an agenda, or how do we do that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can
that's
do it.
well within your right to ask that.
At the beginning of the process, we need to know what y'all have already identified their problem.
Well, and how to prioritize our work, what we address
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
There's some
Exactly.
nitty gritty that may be able to wait.
And that's
some-
true, because the city council needs to give us direction on where to look, because each of us are going to have our own ideas as to what we feel.
Yeah,
So
Um,
I think that's a perfect point made.
Thank you.
I think the original request was just a broad overview of it, like looking at just the bigger thing. Does the organization and the layout of it really make sense? And I
we
think-
can do that, but I think the part of that process, we do need to know what y'all have already identified or you think are problems.
As problems, yes.
Mhm.
And if we could get that list, that would, as Emma said, help us identify priorities. So we're not just doing, we're not going
And you,
off task.
right, and you will have, you, meaning council collectively, will have a better feel than we will for what citizen concerns are about ordinances.
Nobody's talked to me about it.
Yeah, me either. So, I mean, I complain, but, but I haven't heard what other people complain or are happy about. So,
So I'm not hearing Maureen jump in here. So
oh yeah. I
Just
guess
to
you're
be
the
in
first to
a
hear.
just to assist the formal process of these things, if you would like to send something to council, one of you must make a motion, the other person must second, another person seconds it, you all vote to send that motion. So just an example of what you just discussed. Emma could say, I move to request council consider an item to provide the ordinance review committee with highlights of areas they're concerned about and more direction on how to prioritize this work.
I so move.
And
I
so-
second.
yeah. And
Second,
so
David.
then you would take a vote, and then that item gets officially sent to council. And then I can be the liaison to express what you all have expressed here today of why we're kind of punting it back and needing more direction.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Karen, did you want to bring something up? You raised your hand.
It's close to what you're saying. I was quite taken by what Britton said, that a number of the ordinances just carried over from an HOA. And then I heard someone, and I don't know all the names because you guys are really small on my screen, that we have too many, and Deborah mentioned overreach. And I'm hoping that some of the agenda is to, and this goes back to what's the purpose, to assure that the ordinance that we have are the ones we need that make a difference. It's what a governmental entity would want in a city versus what an HOA does.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I was wondering if there was a model.
Well, and that's why
exactly, yeah.
almost the whole code. It's just very cursory and everything. And it just looks like we're a giant HOA. That's what it looks like to me.
Really?
That it's a big
Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. So that's why I say a lot of stuff needs to be pulled down for it to be a government organization. I ran cities, and I did, just to give you a little, I wasn't here last time to give you a little bit of background. I'm a retired colonel. I ran installations, so I was actually like the mayor. And we had a bunch of qualification that we had to follow, being that we're a federal installation. But with that said, there was also things that you needed to do to enhance the community. And so I decided, well, let me just go ahead and look what I've got from my experience and everything. And that's exactly what it looks like. I'm totally off from what other people think and everything, but to me, that's what it looked like from everything that I went through. Yes, of course, there's the stuff that the state law requires, but when you get into the nitty-gritty, it just looks like
What's the matter?
it looks like a giant HOA.
You know, I have never lived in an HOA, so I don't have any
Oh, I
idea
have.
what they look like.
I have, and that's why I moved to a city versus living to a
Yeah.
HOA. And then when I look at this, I go, man, maybe I need to move to the county.
But Dave, is your point that an HOA has too many rules? Is that what the point is?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Any other discussion that's in reference to this this motion?
Karen, did you?
Karen, you have anything to say about the motion on the table?
No, I just support it. I definitely think that I would like more guidance. So if the committee is also looking for more guidance, then I support it. And
Okay. But Maureen, will we do a roll
Yes,
call on this?
do a vote.
Everybody ready for a vote?
Member
right.
Lowe, Member Duncan,
I,
a Member Davenport,
Aye.
and Member Wilson.
Aye.
So that carries.
Okay, thank you. That seems to conclude the agenda I've got. Have you got something else, Deborah?
Again, just to sort of facilitate helping to learn how to do this
Yeah.
together. With number 4, for example, it says review, document, and consider a future update. And you mentioned to Maureen, hey, this might need to come up on a future agenda. There is not a take action on this item, so you don't necessarily need a formal motion, but you might want to have the group clarify what your plan is there. Because we could just,
Okay.
do you think so? Would you kind of agree?
I thought it could go as just be on the agenda.
Again,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I think you could put it back on there.
okay.
I do think it's not on the agenda, but I think it might be a good idea for us to look at at least the broader whole. I have not done that. I've read the other stuff, but to look at the whole and get a first impression about whether this all makes sense, just the way it comes together. It may be that we can look at it, and say, well, like you suggested, the parks shouldn't be in this bucket. It'll be in this bucket over here. And there may be some other things like that. I don't know because I haven't reviewed it. That shouldn't take too much time, and it's certainly something that we could do and have on the agenda next time to at least come back, Maureen, and say, these are things that we noticed right off the bat.
Okay, so you want a discussion of inconsistencies?
Well, is that I guess the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't know how to put that.
We have to be more specific.
insights,
Karen, go ahead.
I was trying to find a neutral word. I just said like insights or thoughts or something. I like your good, bad, and ugly, but I'm not sure how to.
So Carol, you will create the next agenda. So
good.
one way to do it is to ask people to email you suggestions for agenda items.
Okay,
Oh, good. Oh, so
I'll
you'll,
do that. Yeah,
okay, you'll
email
ask
me
committee members.
items that you
Right,
have.
so as a committee member, you won't copy everybody else because that would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act, but you will email Carol directly and then he'll plan the
Individually,
agenda.
Yeah.
not
Right.
collectively.
And
Okay.
so if you have
Exactly.
observations, David, that you've already made, because you looked through it, let me know, and then I'll discuss it with my dog and get back to Maureen about it.
And Carol, how about assignments? Like if you tell me what you want me to do, I will do it, but.
I hope that
it's
within the
on my
first
calendar.
few meetings, we'll come up with a good handle on what the things are we need to do,
All right,
and then who might want to take those on.
okay,
I'm not prepared to do that today. It may be another couple of meetings before we
okay.
have a good feel for that. I think that's a good approach.
So what's your email, Carol?
It's Wilson C. and then the word warm, WARM, like my personality.
So Wilson C. and then
It's all Wilson C. Warm, one word.
Warm,
Uh-huh.
WARM,
Yes, sir.
not W.
That too. At gmail.com. Any other things?
No, I think you nailed it. I just want to make sure I understand, I guess, leaving here that essentially you've asked everyone to look at this overview of the code, right? In theory, and then kind of come back with discussion materials for next time because you're saying it should be carried over on the next agenda. And then you're saying that for item 5, you're sending, you did a motion to council, but that you've asked all of us to sort of review the outline of the code and come with initial observations or anything.
Right.
We noticed.
If they have suggestions, already see things that need to be changed, there's no point in us discovering those on our own.
Okay. Yep. And I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay, and do we want to say when the next meeting is?
Yeah, we need to look at our calendar. David's
we-
already said he's going to be out of town.
So we
I-
did
I-
vote for the first,
Yeah, I saw on the, out
Yeah.
there that you guys were looking at doing it the first Tuesday of every month.
Trying to, yeah.
I went out and looked at the first Tuesday of every month, and the only month I would be here is in October.
Oh, wow.
I
That's
travel-
not very convenient, is it?
Well, I let Mayor Roscoe know that off the bat when I said I'm willing to help and do things and help in the city as possible. But I do travel. I travel at least 26 to 30 weeks a year.
Really?
I do.
Wow.
But I think we'll need to work on getting more committee members.
Correct.
Yeah.
Some more alternates or whatever.
Yeah, we just need one more alternate, and then we need, I think, 2 more committee members now, because we had one who dropped out for health concerns.
Okay. So see, I serve better as an alternate
Right? In
That's
theory.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
because
can
I'm
see
not
that.
here
Yeah.
much of the time.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was here this month, so I could come and jump in
Yeah.
on this one. But the majority of the time, I'm all over the world.
Okay.
But you could even all over the world weigh in.
I can. Sure, send me something.
Use your expertise to
Absolutely. You
information.
send me an email,
Okay.
send me
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, I don't want
And-
to lose what you know.
And
exactly.
ask any, I'm here, I'm an alternate.
Okay.
So I'm here, whether I'm here present or not.
All right.
I can reply to emails all over the world. Okay.
well, but we need 3 people here, actually in the,
For the forum, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying you guys need to.
but
get
we
enough-
could
Yeah,
put
let's
you
get-
in like we did Karen.
That's the number
Yeah.
one thing is to try to
It's more
recruit.
committee members.
What, Deborah, what has been effective in attracting committee members?
Asking people you know point blank,
That's exactly right.
email, contacting your friends and neighbors and encouraging them to join in and assuring their concerns that they don't have to be an expert. We're really not here for expert opinions. What we're here for is to design a government that functions for us And we only do that by being a part of it. So we have to get our hands dirty and spend some time.
Well, I did exactly that to my next door neighbor, and she betrayed me and joined the tree board.
Oh, there you go.
It's, you know, the reality is there's a place for everyone, and we have a lot of seats open. So I think this committee in particular might be very intimidating because of the idea of ordinance and law, and then when you open that website and there's so much. But the reality is that y'all get to set your own pace. You can decide to take it chapter by chapter and go slowly and divvy it up. You don't, you know, there is no great pressing concern here. And until council sends you an actual ordinance to review, that means that you all have a lot of
And that's what I was
play.
going to say. Remember that this is like an elephant. You eat the sandwich.
Yeah.
You know, you can't take on the whole, and it's a big elephant.
It is.
And so that's the whole thing, is when you do something like this, you say, okay, we're going to start with this ordinance, and we're going to review it. Right. And then once you've accomplished what you want to accomplish with that, then you go to the next one. There is no timeline.
Yeah.
It's because my understanding of what Mayor Roscoe wanted and council is that there be a standing committee that looks at the ordinances as they keep on.
That's
Say that right?
accurate,
Okay.
100% accurate.
So,
All right,
And that
well,
it be part of the open meetings. So
we
that
do
this,
need to recruit.
yeah, conversation happens in front of the public.
Yeah.
And that,
provide the transparency.
yeah, and that the public has the opportunity to come in here and give opinion on a specific ordinance.
Right.
Or, you know, all of them for that matter.
All right, Karen, anything for the good of the order?
I just was gonna ask, because Deborah, you said that the ordinances would come from the council. So I had been on a committee with Aurora, and so she stopped me someplace she saw me and asked me to be on this committee. And that committee had a specific area and developed a specific expertise in writing ordinances. But my kind of assumption was that this group would look at them with the hat of the citizen and would not have the expertise necessarily in what's in the ordinance. I'm getting a little confused.
The way I see our role, and Deborah can straighten me out if I'm wrong, is that we look at it from citizens' perspective and say, this makes sense. It's overreach. It's perfect. Here's how it could be improved.
I can carry out what's required as a citizen in this ordinance, basically.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the nitty gritty, that it really affects a lot of people, i.e. fences, i.e. trees.
Deer, pets.
i.e. deers, exactly. That's when I think, and I've enjoyed what's come out from, it's time to do surveys to get more input from the community.
Yeah.
At least those that are out there on the email blast. And use Monkey Survey. I mean, I was with the VA also after I retired from the Army, and Monkey Survey was our friend.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the only way you were really to find out what the veteran population needed, is to go out and ask. And the best way to do that is with Monkey Survey. Just a thought.
No, I'm with you on that. And invite people in to react to it.
Absolutely.
Maureen, I think I asked you, and if you answered, it's gone by me. What do you get the most calls about? Questions on ordinances?
Permitting, you know, I would say we get quite a bit about that. The typical stuff, like fences, impervious cover is a big one.
Questions or complaints?
Both.
Okay.
Probably more questions on impervious cover, I guess.
We'll get complaints
Yeah,
about
I'm
that
sure
one
there's
too.
complaints yeah.
Yeah.
And where did that percentage? I'm getting off base.
No, that's right.
Where did that percentage come from?
It's generally the Wimberley Valley. So they adopted 30%. I think before 30%, it was at 35%, and it decreased. They would like to, like if you see a Wimberley Valley Watershed Association, they would like to decrease it to 25%. They haven't been successful so far, but
But
That's what they're
5
pushing
years
for.
ago, we weren't even doing an impervious cover.
I would say it came in like 2009.
So in my understanding, the history of it is that the Meadow Center got together with local officials and created the Cypress Creek Watershed Protection Program. And that program was a valley-wide effort to essentially protect specifically the groundwater runoff into Cypress Creek. And so impervious coverage, yes, it impacts our aquifers' ability to recharge, but it specifically impacts the way the water runs off into our creeks. And so the impervious coverage was set at 30% valley-wide as part of that official effort.
It was
Um,
requested.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so the,
requested, because that's not codified, is it?
yes, and
It-
Wood Creek it
For
is.
Wood Creek it is.
Yeah.
What's that?
For Wood Creek it is.
No, I know for Wood Creek it is, but you went, because we took the suggestion, but the suggestion that Wimberley Valley put out there was not codified.
So Wimberley also follows it, but what you're discussing is there is a county-wide regulation as well, and that's dictated by, it's a different set of standards, and it's less about impervious coverage, and it's more, well, I should back up. It is about impervious coverage, but it also includes like your septic system and the drainage on your land. So if you're working outside of a city and you fall in the county, you have to work with the water protection organizations, and they look at your impervious coverage. They look at the size of your septic, and they look at the runoff on your, your topography, and you still have to meet standards with them. So it's not like it's a Wild West free for all outside the city. There are still regulations
Oh, no,
and all
no,
that.
I've lived in the
Yeah.
We're kind of getting straight off.
Right.
So let's, we don't have anything else on this agenda. Please email me if you have agenda items you'd like to see on there. And Deborah, I look forward to hearing from the council some ideas about what they consider. I've written down yours already. Thank you very much, David. Thanks for coming. Emma, thank you. Karen, thanks for zooming in, or whatever the platform is we have here. And
You're welcome.
Deborah, thank you. Maureen, thank you.
And we're adjourned.
We are adjourned.
You gotta bang. it.
Okay.
You gotta bang.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
3:38.
Yeah, thank you.